Welcome to Inspired Change, a new inspirational and motivational broadcast that strives to empower men in a positive way, designed to educate, empower, and inspire even the busiest individual on the go over that first cup of coffee. Please join me in welcoming Gunter, international psychologist, author, speaker, and producer.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Inspired Change. I hope for those of you who listened to the last podcast, provocatively titled, Are You an Angry Dad? You got something out of it. Now I know that there's dads out there who don't fit the angry dad stereotype, okay? And you may have thought that I'm sort of preaching to the converted. That's not the point. What I'm hoping to do with that is those of you who aren't angry dads, I want you to think about the importance of the different elements in raising your child, especially at this point in time when I'm trying to focus on boys. So hopefully for that group, you guys are going to get still something out of it. And for those guys who sort of sit there and go, yep, I think that's me, I hope it gave you some inspiration to take a look at yourself, dig deep, and make some changes. This, as I said, could be a really significant turning point in your role as a parent, but also in your existence as a man. So where do I want to take this podcast? Well, again, I'm going to narrow it down. I want us dads to get clear about boys and what boys basically need to grow up. And so I want to explode some myths about this, because we sure as hell have got a lot of mythology out there which isn't based in any fact at all, but seems to direct and influence how we relate to boys, how we try to raise them, and the sort of focus that we have in trying to influence boys. And I think that given the current mental health statistics for children, boys, so let's go zero, well maybe not zero, but let's go 3 to about 11, 12, then 13 to 18. We really need to do some serious reflecting on whatever it is that we're doing in society, both within the family context, but also within the community context. I think, if we can look at the relationship between those elements, like family, community, and the bigger picture, there's some tweaking that we can do, which would be really, really useful. Okay, so the convention that I'm going to be operating under is that boys are defined as a sex, okay? So that's XY chromosome. However, gender is a social construct. And I think it's in the realm of gender that we need to do some serious rethinking in terms of the ideas that we have about what is a boy, okay? And there's been a lot written in this area, and people have different ideas. And those of you who follow my work will understand that I'm about deconstructing patriarchy, and that our parental behaviour and our social fabric has been based on patriarchal ideas and ideologies, and that's influenced how we see boys, right? So, we see them as these rambunctious, overly active, little beings that bounce off the wall if they're not given enough run around and get tired out and all that sort of stuff, right? Now, I'm going to suggest that there's an element of truth in that, but it's also a reflection of how we perceive that boy. And that is that, I need to ask myself a question as a dad: am I demonstrating to that boy that that's what we do? Well, what about the whole idea of being? Now, I've got 2 grandsons and a granddaughter, and so I'm coming from personal experience. I've also raised a daughter into adulthood and a son together with my wife. So, the first thing to understand is that from a a brain perspective, there really isn't a great deal of difference between men's and women's brains once they reach adulthood. However, what we need to look at is what happens to us along the way. What is it that influences our development, especially from a neuroscience point of view? Yes, there are absolutely some differences in that. Part of which arises from the sort of nurture aspect. Okay, how am I going to nurture my child, my son? Okay, and how does the rest of the world, deal with that as well? Now, one of the things that's been particularly evident since the 80s is this issue about ADD, ADHD, and it's usually referred to as a developmental disorder. Okay, it's something that's sort of almost inherent in the child. A lot of people talk about it as being genetic. Now, I follow a family physician called Gabor Mate in his work, and his colleague Gordon Neifeld, a developmental psychologist. And Gabor Mate really describes ADD, ADHD as a condition of adjusting to stress within the family. And I must say that in all my time working with teenagers, those boys that I work with where there is, they have attention deficit disordered behaviours, there inevitably are some tensions, some family stresses, in some cases some traumas in the family. Some of it's subtle and some of it is more obvious, but it's there. And so the idea there is that those stresses, those traumas interfere with the attachment relationship between parent and child, and it lays the foundation for those adaptive behaviours. So in essence, I could almost argue that in some cases, attention deficit disordered behaviours are like an adaptation to deal with difficult situations, and in some instances can work as a superpower for some boys. But what we tend to do is, because on another level some of those behaviours socially are disruptive and they don't fit into the sort of normed social expectations, we want to manage those. And, a lot of it's attached to being, organised, focused, task-oriented. So we give them medication that will do that. Now, obviously there's a point in having some medication, but the other part of it is, and this is where I'm going to challenge the idea, is I think we can help boys, if they've got that sort of attention deficit, hyperactivity stuff going on, we can help them rewire their brain. It's a sort of neuro hack. Okay, now, in some other podcasts, I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about that. But the focus is the best thing that I can do for my son is to bond with that boy as early as possible. Now, I know there are some people in the field who will talk about the fact that essentially in the first year, so birth to the age of 6, a boy is very much his mother's child. I don't totally agree with that. I think there's an element of truth in that, but the reality is I have watched personally fathers bond very, very quickly with their sons in that age frame from birth to 6. And essentially for those boys, dad's like a superhero. To the degree where some boys want to sound like dad, they want to walk like dad, they want to look like dad. And yes, mum's there, when they hurt themselves, usually they make a beeline for mum. Well, sometimes because they hurt themselves around dad and the activities that they're doing. So, there's nothing wrong with running for sanctuary with mum, and that's cool, okay? So I tend to see a great deal of importance in boys and fathers bonding very early to actually work towards being attuned. And that can happen, just through, being present and playing with them and so on, but actually really truly nurturing them. Okay? So it's that place where I'm going to care for them. So bathing, feeding initially, and then doing lunches with them, making dinner, doing some of the sort of little chores as they get older together. Right? One of the things that I often watch parents do, or they'll describe it to me, is that I tell my son to clean his room. Well, okay, if that's a 14-year-old, I get it. But, with a 4-5-year-old, I think the best approach is to let's go and clean your room together. So it's a joint thing. Because in the first year, children want to really be with their parents. So they're not going to be doing things like cleaning up. In the second year, there's a clear emphasis, and I've been through this, but I'm going to repeat it, of being liked and loved. So we really need to nurture that seed of being liked and loved. Around 3, and this is despite the fact that we believe that, there are the terrible twos. And there is an element of truth in the terrible twos, because it's actually allowing the child to learn from frustration and, not to judge that. The moment I go into this thing about a temper tantrum, people have this really negative spin on it. But think about it differently. Think about this as a learning experience for the child, and for me, in a sense, as a coaching process for the child. So if I'm good at regulating my emotions, I can share that with my son. I can let him go for a little bit. Okay, I get it. You're really frustrated. Okay, now let's deal with this when you're calmer. And let me show how you can do that. So I'm going to change my posture in relationship to the boy. I'm going to change the tone of voice, and I'm going to help them with things like, now take a deep breath, just going to hold it for a minute, and then you just blow all the anger out. Go. Right. Now, most kids around 3 are pretty cooperative with that. Even at 2, I can get kids to fall in line with that and actually do it and get a bit of a buzz out of like, are you feeling calmer? Yes, I am. Okay, great. So let's look, what's the problem? What do you need? All right? Rather than looking at the temper tantrum as just an angry outburst where that child's trying to manipulate me and make my life miserable. They don't operate at that level. It's a pejorative sort of interpretation of that child's behaviour. So the next couple of years are going to be, again, a development, a socialisation process, and much of that comes from my interaction with the child as a dad, but also how I interact with his mother. Right? So it's really, really important that that child sees well-managed conflict. And so, I was listening to someone recently talk about the fact that, one of the things that he feels that most boys need is, understand who's in charge, what are the rules, and making sure that those rules are really fairly enforced. Again, I'm not a fan. I actually go, let's ditch the rules and let's teach that child that values are of a higher priority than rules. In fact, rules should be based on values, not the other way around. So I'm going to be looking at how can I have that child understand that they're loved and that they're respected and that they, get more out of our relationship when we cooperate with one another. For example, that cooperation lets me trust them, and that's going to be really, really important. So again, very clear on that. Now, there is a particular myth in that for some reason or another sort of gets thrown at boys all the time, and that's the testosterone thing. And I think, yes, hormones are important and there is definitely a change, but let's not reduce the relationship or that boy's being to a bunch of chemicals.